Let's talk about the new collection from Terra Moons called Winter on Saturn, and this is a very curated kind of color story bundle of single eyeshadows. There's shimmer shadows as well as matte eyeshadows. And I like that this is a smaller launch. It's definitely a lot less overwhelming. Sometimes they launch like 16 single shadows at a time, and I think that's definitely a lot to kind of look through and decide which ones you want, while this one feels almost kind of like an eyeshadow palette, but it's more of a bundle. So we have 6 shimmer shadows and 4 matte eyeshadows. And here is the color story. It's a very cool tone color story, and I love the different tones of the mattes in here. This empty palette is from Cosmetics. I do wish that they came out with an empty palette as an option that matched the theme that you could put these into if you wanted to. I do feel like it's kind of missing some sort of an empty palette that you could put these into, though I think most people that are going to be buying these as single eyeshadows probably already have a lot of empty palettes that they can put these into. I'm going to read some of the details behind the theme. On January 21st, 2025, an exciting planetary alignment will occur. 4 planets will be visible to our eye in the sky, and these are Saturn, Venus, Jupiter, and Mars. The other 2, Uranus and Neptune, will require a telescope to see. This is a very fitting theme for Terra Moons, I think, given their name and also just how they have been naming their single eyeshadows. This feels very on brand, and I love that. It definitely feels very thought out, like they've obviously planned this. So this collection is launching tomorrow, January 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and I do have an affiliate code with the brand, which I'll put up on the screen. I do believe they're also going to be having a sale. The new shades will be excluded from that, and I did receive these in PR, so thank you so much to Terra Moons for sending these over to me so that I could show these to you before launch. So I'm going to be getting into some detail swatches of the shimmer shadows. We're going to talk about the shifts, we're going to talk about the color, the texture, you name it, and then I'll show you some comparison swatches as well. And then I'll show you 2 looks, and I'll give you some of my thoughts at the end of the video. So let's get right into it. First 3 shades are Mimas, Ice Rings, and Iapetus. The first 2 shades are pretty smooth, but the 3rd shade definitely has a little bit more texture to it. And none of these feel squishy or anything like that. They're definitely on the dry side. So Mimas looks like it doesn't have a shift. Very white, maybe with a little bit of gray in there. So it's not fully a silver, but it is definitely silvery. And then Ice Rings is so stunning. I could not find anything to really compare to this one. It's got like a really light, icy, almost aqua blue straight on with a little bit of a purple base, also shifting to purple. It is such a stunner. And then Iapetus, it's got like a peach, like a really vibrant peach, almost orange straight on with a plumish base. And then it shifts to aqua blue and maybe a little bit of purple. It is such an ultra dimensional shade. I immediately thought of my shade from the Light Scatters palette when I first swatched this shade, and I did include that one in the comparison swatches. It's very, very similar to that one, but it does have a little bit more texture than the shade from the Light Scatters palette. And the next 3 shades are Written in the Stars, Saturn's Aurora, and Magnetosphere. Magnetosphere is definitely, I would say, the most kind of shiny, while I think Written in the Stars, the sparkles are a little bit kind of separated from the base, and I would say these have all a little bit more texture, especially compared to the very first shade. And I think up close you'll be able to kind of see how the sparkles are kind of sitting on top of this base in Written in the Stars. So Written in the Stars, I see a teal base. It's almost a little bit grayish. It's definitely very unique, and it has bright orange flash straight on. Saturn's Aurora and Magnetosphere do have a little bit of a darker base to them. So this one, actually, I'm going to add another layer. So here it is a bit more opaque, and this one has a bunch of different sparkles throughout it, but it is definitely more of a purple straight on. And I see green and blue sparkles throughout it, and then it shifts to orange, and then all the way to green. I actually see a little bit of red in there maybe as well. And then here's just like a close-up of the different sparkles throughout it. Very dimensional kind of shade. And then Magnetosphere, I would say, is more of a black-based multi-chrome. It's a very metallic, and it flashes kind of almost like a really bright jeweled aqua straight on. And then it shifts to purple. the first look, I'm going to be creating an eyeshadow wing, and I'm using my brush from the Light Scatters collection in collaboration with me and Clionadh, and I'm going in with Emerging Hemisphere, and I'm just slowly kind of mapping out the wing and then filling it in. And then using the Shine On Shimmer Shadow Enhancer from my collab with Clionadh, putting it on the lid and then tapping it out, of course. And for the first shimmer shadow, I'm going in with Magnetosphere, and I ended up using my finger to apply it because I wanted to cover a larger area faster, and the brush I used was too small and also too flat, so it didn't really pick up the texture. I should have used, if anything, a slightly fluffier flat brush to pick it up, and I did experience more fallout trying to apply it with a brush than with my finger. And then for the inner corner, I just wanted to sweep Mimas with my finger on the inner corner going into my crease and up above Magnetosphere. And here is the first finished look. And for the second look, I'm going in with Haze of Saturn in the crease, and I'm just kind of fluffing it out and blending it out and putting a little bit on the outer corner as well. And I'm using Dust Storms to blend out the edges a little bit. And for the shimmer, I'm going in with Adept, and I used my finger, and this one is definitely a little bit on the flaky side, and I would recommend a tacky primer so you don't experience fallout throughout the day. And from experience, this type of texture does tend to not fully stick down on your lid, and it's just a little bit looser, so it can come off your lid, especially if you have hooded lids. And then I went in with Haze of Saturn on my lower lash line a little bit just to connect it, and here's the second finished look. So I've done 3 looks with the collection, and I feel like I got a pretty good idea on how the mattes are, the shimmers are. I also have a lot of experience with Terra Moons mattes and shimmers as well. I'm wearing 3 shadows from the collection. I'm wearing Dust Storms, Doom Mons, and Written in the Stars. And this look is going to be up on my Instagram reel, so make sure you're following me over there for some more looks. Overall, as I mentioned, I do really like the color story. I like the different tones, and I really like that this is themed. Again, I really wish there was an empty palette that came with this collection, since there is a very particular thought out theme here. I do like that you have the option to buy these as single shadows as well, in case this color story just isn't fully for you and maybe you're only interested in 1 or 2 shades. Overall, the mattes and the shimmers feel very on par with Terra Moons. The mattes are more on the powdery side. They do have quite a bit of pickup. They're a little bit less harder pressed, which makes them extremely pigmented and very blendable. However, it is not my favorite matte formula just in general from any brand that does have this kind of formula, and that's just a personal preference for me. I find them a little bit harder to use than some of my favorite formulas like Viseart and Blend Bunny, for example. As for the shimmers, none of these are squishy or anything like that, well looking, emollient feeling. These are a drier formula. There are 2 shades, I would say these 2, that are the most smooth, and the rest of the shades have just a little bit of a texture to them, just a little bit. I would definitely recommend a tacky primer with those if you do tend to have fallout, especially if you have hooded lids, because the texture is definitely the kind of texture that might cause you to have some fallout. I think my most favorite shimmer shades from the collection are definitely Written in the Stars and Mimas and Ice Rings as well, and Adept, but I do think Ice Rings is the most unique. I really couldn't find anything really similar to this one. At first when I saw it, I thought, oh, I have so many to compare to this, and then when I was actually swatching and going through my collection to find the comparisons, I didn't really find anything that's remotely similar, and I think that makes it a true standout, so I do really like that one. If I was to really say my top 3 are definitely these 3 shades. I love this one. I would love to see more shades like this from them. So those are some of my thoughts on the collection so far, and if you enjoy this kind of content, I have so many videos up like this. There are some of them up on the screen for you in case you want to keep watching, and if not, then thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.